At this time, I would like to call to order the October 7th regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. And I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. So we have a motion by Ms. Owens to adopt the agenda. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Junker. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session, and I will read this motion. Motion to go into closed session to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to the North Carolina General Statutes listed on our agenda to discuss personnel matters protected by state law and to discuss student matters made confidential by general statutes and FERPA. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Livengood. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Owens. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0. We're now in closed session. Welcome to the reconvening of the October 7th regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. At this time, if you would, please bow with me as we have the invocation. As we gather this evening, I express thanks for this day and all of its blessings. I ask this board to be mindful of the business we are about to undertake. We are thankful for everyone in attendance tonight. Further, we are thankful for the opportunities to govern and the freedoms we enjoy. We pause to remember the students, faculty members, and families in our system and community who are facing challenges. Our positive thoughts are with them. As always, we seek wisdom to make the best decisions for the students and citizens of Davie County. Amen. At this time, we'll ask some local 4-H members to come up for our lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, guys. At this time, we're moving on to the approval of past minutes, and the minutes that we have tonight for approval are from our regular scheduled meeting from September the 2nd. Do I have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Owens. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Livengood. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on now to board report and important dates. And I'll start with, on October the 15th at 12 noon, we have a luncheon with Mr. Bill Kobe, which is the chairman of the North Carolina State Board of Education, that some of our board members and staff are going to be at. And then 15th through the 17th, there's a law conference in Asheville that some of the board members will also attend. And then we have on the 17th, the afternoon of the 17th, some of the board members will also be at the Ashley Furniture open house. We're looking forward to that. I think we have some students that are participating in that, maybe the band and some other students. And then we will have lunch. The board will have lunch at North Davie Middle School on the 23rd. And then we'll have our regular scheduled board meeting back in here on the 4th of November. And I think that's all of the important dates I have at this point. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hartness for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see everyone out this evening. We have a lot of things to cover tonight, but I'll start off with a few brief comments. I first want to thank everyone who participated and prepared our groundbreaking ceremony a few weeks ago. It was a wonderful event. We're excited about where we are. We'll get an update this evening from our architects, so we're real excited about that project and continue to be. Aaron Full is going to give us some accountability results this evening, but today, and this won't be part of your report tonight, but today SAT scores across America were released and in North Carolina. The class of 2014 in Davie County Schools had a combined math, critical reading, and writing score of 1501. Our participation in the SAT was increased from last year. Our rate was a little lower than the class of 2013, but overall Davie County Schools scored higher than the state and the national averages, and our students had the highest SAT scores among the 15 school districts in the Piedmont Triad Education Consortium. So congratulations to our class of 2014. As I mentioned, Aaron Foyle will give us a full report on the SAT and ACT results at your November meeting. But we always recognize people at the beginning of the meeting, and Aaron doesn't like to be recognized, but I'm going to brag on her for just a second. Yesterday, Aaron was interviewed by the American School Board Journal, who's doing an article about online testing. A couple weeks ago, she represented Davie County Schools at a meeting with the Vice Chair of the State Board of Education, Mr. Buddy Collins. Buddy is leading a task force to look at testing and accountability in the state, and Aaron has a part of a small group that he's been meeting with to get advice. So Aaron is very well respected for her professionalism and her expertise in her field, and we should be very proud to have her representing Davie County Schools at both a state and a national level. So if you could join me in giving Aaron a thank you. And you will see tonight when she presents, she deals with more data than any single person in this district, and she does a fine job of doing that. Mr. Fuller shared with you a few minutes ago in the important dates update that next Wednesday at noon we will be meeting at a lunch meeting with the chairman of the State Board of Education, Mr. Bill Kobe. Chairman Kobe and I have been in several meetings before, and he and I discussed a visit to Davie County, so we're very privileged to have us on his calendar and coming through Davie County next week. We'll tour a few schools before lunch at noon, and we're real excited about having him. We've invited the Board of Education, we invited our principals, we invited our state representatives to this meeting. We've heard back our state representatives. Representative Howard is chairing a committee in Raleigh, so she will not be able to be there next Wednesday. And we heard from Senator Brock's office today that he has a previous commitment. So we did invite those folks to be with us, but I understand that they have a very busy schedule as well. I wanted to share with you a little bit about Chairman Kobe. I've had a pleasure of being in several meetings with him and talking with him, but he serves on the governor's education cabinet as the chairman of the State Board of Education. He's been a United States congressman. He served as the athletic director at Chapel Hill. Gene? Under Governor Martin, he was Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Diener at one point in time. For 4 years, he was the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, and in 2004, he was a candidate in the primary for the governor's race. And I've, again, met with him several times and have a tremendous respect for his leadership, and we're privileged to have him in Davie County next week. So September has been a busy month. We've been celebrating a lot going on. The school year is flying by. Christmas will be here before we know it. The weather is turning. I don't look forward to winter. I never do as your superintendent, but it will be here before we know it. And things are going well. So I'll leave that as my superintendent's update tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, thank you. And you mentioned the groundbreaking, and it was I would also like to thank everyone for coming out. The large crowd that made that a very special event, and it was exciting, very exciting. At this time, we're moving on to the architect's report, and I will ask Clark Pierce and Wesley Curtis to come talk to us.
And Mr. Chairman, I get the opportunity to present again tonight. Chad, the board members, Dr. Hartness. We're certainly pleased to kind of give you an update as to where we are in our scheme of things. And as we shift to the screen, I'll begin to move forward. We enjoyed as well the groundbreaking. Always, that's the fun part, you know, as we get into it. And for us, it's the easy part. You don't have a whole lot of fussing and fighting at that particular junction, but as you begin to develop drawings and get contractors building, it takes when you're dealing with a whole lot of people, then that makes it a little more challenging. as well as technology. As challenging as technology, that's right. That's right. Well, I guess I can just kind of crank off without photographs. To kind of give you an update where we are, you all have seen, I guess they've started doing some, installing erosion control measures at the site. Phase 1 construction has begun. So they began to install erosion control measures, beginning to, at some point, to tear down a couple of trees. And once those things, erosion control is in place, trees are down, then you'll begin to see grading in full swing, which should happen. I had a little chart here, but that should happen probably in another couple of weeks. So they are moving forward on schedule and progressing. As far as our drawings are concerned, as the button would show you if we had it there, well, in the past 30 days, what we've been trying to do is we've been, as I said, we broke ground. The contractor has started. We've been continuing to develop our design development documents. We're coming to the end of that, the middle of this month. I think it's the middle of October is when we're supposed to be finished with design development documents. So we are moving fast to that end. It's our hope as we begin to bring our consultants online and kind of incorporate their changes. We've been meeting with the staff continuously, updating with technology, as well as other equipment stuff, just coordinating those things to make sure everything fits together in the end. As we present the design development drawings to the staff at the middle of the month, they will then again review and just double check that what changes we've made meets their requirements. So that's our hope at that point. Once we get your review and approval of those, we will then begin to move forward into completing the contract documents for the project. Also, in this phase, that's I'm about at the end now, at this phase, we will begin to do a cost estimate at DD, and so when we present, I guess probably a week or so after we make the presentation of the documents to you, we'll have a cost estimate that we can make sure we're on track so far. And I think in our minds, based on what we've had, what we've talked about, the scope of work, we've tried to keep it tight as we could, and you all know, the staff knows we've been working with them as tight as we could to make sure we stay within our budget. So at this point, we feel comfortable at that point. It's our goal, as you know, to have drawings completed by the end of the year. And so that's still our goal, and we're still on track for that. Are there any questions?
Wesley, you may have mentioned this, but as far as the rough grading, are we on schedule in that project as well?
Yes, we are. Grading has not begun, but based on the bar chart, schedule chart that the contractor presented us, we are on track for that. And as I said, he is installing erosion control measures and as well as beginning to remove some trees. He can only start his grading once he gets those erosion control measures installed, and so far he's on schedule for that.
I've been on site a few times since they broke ground, and it looks good. They're doing a really nice job and moving forward with, as Wesley said, with those erosion control devices, and really looks good. They're doing a really good job. We're proud of that.
I just wanted to chime in case you think you're really missing a great PowerPoint presentation. Primarily what we were going to show you tonight, had technology cooperated, is a variety of the other type drawings that would normally be encompassed within the design development and from there construction document set of drawings. You know, here today you've primarily just seen some floor plans. There's much more, obviously, that goes into the development documents than just floor plans, and we want you to be aware that even though that's all you've seen thus far, that we are working on those other aspects of the job. There are wall sections that show how the exterior walls go together, building sections that are cross-cut in a variety of different directions through the building that shows you the volume of spaces and the various wall sections that occur so the contractor can understand what our intent was. So, you know, And that helps them obviously tie down the cost more accurately than just looking at floor plans. You need to know what the elevations are, how the various walls are constructed, the systems, the mechanical, electrical, all of those sort of things. So it would probably be pretty mundane. A lot of you probably wouldn't understand it, but it's just to give you an idea that we're marching forward with other things other than just the site and the floor plans. And I think, the floor plans are coming together. The floor plans really have been there. There's virtually no changes to those. It's just been the minutia of things that have to happen within all the variety of spaces that educational environment entails. So hopefully we're getting to the end of that. I just met this afternoon with Dawn and Michael to sort of finalize the kitchen equipment, had a few little minor changes on that. So it's just those sort of things, making sure as we get their input, our consultants fully understand what that input is and if there are little tweaks that we need to make as we move forward with the specifications and the final document. So you really didn't miss anything. It's been probably pretty boring, but it's exciting to us.
You missed a great presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for all your hard work. At this time, we're moving on to special report, and that's our audit report. And I will call on Ms. Smink and Deborah White. Ms. Smink and Mr. White for that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Hartness, pleased to be here tonight, like you said, to report on the 2014 audit of Davie County Schools. I think each of you have been given a PDF of the bound copy of the financial statements, as well as a PDF of the required communications letter that we distribute. I'm not going to go over this in extreme detail tonight, but I'm going to go over the highlights. I want everyone to know if you have any questions whatsoever during my presentation, please feel free to stop and interrupt me. I'll go over those questions as best I can. If I can't get an answer tonight, I'll get back to you as soon as we can. But the most important thing within the bound report, there's actually 4 reports that we issue as the independent CPAs. One is the audit report on the overall financial statements. This is the numbers portion of the statements. The second one is on the internal control of the district as a whole. This would be the internal controls primarily as it relates to financial reporting or the financial statements. The third report is going to be internal control and compliance with your state grants that you receive as a district, making sure that the expenditures of those funds are in compliance with the applicable state rules and there's controls over those expenditures. The fourth and final report is a report over internal control and compliance over your federal grants. And it's very similar to the state report in that you're looking at the compliance to the specific guidelines to the specific grants of the federal government. On all 4 of those reports, I'm pleased to announce that we issued an unmodified report, commonly referred to as a clean report. In the past, you may have heard that called an unqualified report, but the accounting standards have changed now, and they call that an unmodified report. I do want to hit on the fund balance of the district, and what I normally do is focus on the operating funds. That would be the general fund and the other special revenue fund. At year end, the district reported about $2.7 million of fund balance in those 2 funds. During the year, the district lost a fund balance of about $600,000. But I want everyone to know that that was intended and expected or planned by the district. They were able to do that because the district had sound financial guidance in the previous years. Whenever you received the stimulus money from the federal government, the ARRA money, the district was able to build up fund balance a little bit because they knew lean years were coming forward and therefore able to have that fund balance build up when those funds are no longer available to the district and using the fund balance a little bit now so you didn't have to make drastic cuts all at one time. We do a lot of audits of school districts throughout the state, and not everyone was so prudent with those ARRA funds to build that fund balance up. And now a lot of the districts are really having tough times and making those really tough cuts, and their hands are tied. They have no fund balance to fall back on when they need to do that. So I think that's something for the management of the district to be commended on. Then I was going to go over the required communications letter, and just by its name, these are items that we are required to communicate to the governing board of the district. The first item in this letter, essentially it discusses any accounting estimates that the district may have, and there really aren't any significant estimates in these financial statements. An estimate, the best analogy I could give you would be, or example, would be like at a bank right now. If a bank has a lot of mortgage loans outstanding, you're going to have an estimate, because more likely than not, you're not going to collect 100% of these loans that are outstanding. So if you had $100 million, you may have a reserve of 20 million or something, let's say, to knock that down to a fair, reasonable amount. Within the financial statements you've got in front of you, there were no such estimates that we had to make that were significant. They're pretty solid numbers that you're looking at. The next item discusses any difficulties that we encountered during the audit. Primarily what that relates to is any difficulties that we encountered in dealing with management. Very pleased to say there were no difficulties. We deal with people at the individual school level, the various department levels, the child nutrition program, and any questions that we ask, I feel that we're given full access to any requests that we have and full answers to those questions. So we're very appreciative of that help during the audit. The next item discusses any corrected or uncorrected misstatements during the audit. When we come in to do an audit, the client gives us a general ledger, a set of books for us to audit. If we find errors or mistakes in that, we'll make an adjusting journal entry and require that ledger to be adjusted. But during our audit, there were no items that we noted that required an adjusting entry other than items that management brought to our attention and maybe wanted to get some assistance from us in helping them make the exact correct entry on those items. And the last item of significance in that letter is that there were no items noted during the audit where the Davie County Schools had to go out and discuss the nature of the item with another CPA firm. That would be like getting a second opinion if you had a diagnosis from a doctor where you wanted to make sure that you agree with the interpretation that we had as auditors, so you would go out and consult with another auditors. So there were no overly complex items such as that. But in conclusion, a very good report. Like I said, all unmodified reports. No findings were issued or identified, items that we would have to report as an issue, a departure from GAP, or a compliance issue. No such items as that. And again, management was very helpful and very cooperative, and again, we're very appreciative of that assistance.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Do we have any questions or? I'd like to thank you and thank Ms. Mink and all the staff that participated in helping collect the information for the audit. And I know there's a lot of hard work went into this, and I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. At this time, we're moving on to recognitions, and I will call on Mr. Todd Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have an opportunity tonight to recognize two folks in our district who are very instrumental in our day-to-day activity. The first one I don't think could be with us tonight, but it's our bus driver of the year. And each year we recognize a person from every school as being the bus driver of the year at that location. And then from those nominees, we pick one to represent the county. Our driver this year has 2 years' experience, and some of her peer comments include she has a very positive attitude, both on the bus and in her classroom. She's a very energetic and uplifting person. She cares for the needs of her students, and she promotes student leadership and works to develop those skills with her students both on the bus and in the classroom. She handles discipline very professionally in dealing with student behavior. She works closely with her administration at the school level and also with us to resolve issues with her routes and things like that that come up. She has a great safety record. Bus driving is kind of hard. If you in our line of work, you see a lot of things that get scrubbed and bumped into and beat and banged, and even with the technology we have available today with cameras and GPS tracking systems, a lot of responsibility falls back on the driver. This person, she fosters a very caring and loving relationship. She actually took in one of her students this past year into her home for foster care temporarily until a permanent home could be found because of a domestic violence issue that took the parents of both of the children. She's a teacher assistant at Pine Brook, and her name is Miss Michelle Sigmund. I think Brooke's here. Maybe she can take the award back to her, and congratulate her on behalf of the board.
I feel like I always have to say something, which is a bad habit. So just on behalf of the board, to the bus drivers everywhere, I mean, I have trouble with 3 of my own children, and just 3 in the car, managing all that. So I can't imagine a bus load and all the responsibilities, and like so many people, she's obviously going above and beyond the call. So on behalf of the board, thank you.
Our second recognition tonight is also very important to our team. When things happen to buses like happen to technology, obviously we need people to fix them. And our buses, if it reassures you, and you have about 11 computer-controlled systems that operate those buses in and out each day, and so there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong. And our staff personally at the location where I'm at, is responsible for maintaining the buses and activity buses, designing bus routes, and maintaining our safety records for the fleet. This past year, our staff was recognized for having the safest fleet in the central region of North Carolina, and we were second overall in the state. And so that speaks highly of the folks that you have employed working on buses. And every year we have a vote that our peers recognize one of their own to be recognized as a Transportation Professional of the Year for their outstanding service. This year's winner is with us tonight. I'd like to ask Dennis Short to come up. He currently serves as a Level 2 mechanic, and he does major and minor repairs, inspections, and preventative maintenance and those kind of things. He's a state certified school bus inspector. He's a very self-motivated mechanic, always works hard, and requires a little supervision. I can always count on him to go the extra mile, whatever it takes. He's there when I need him. He's very active in his church, in his community. He enjoys farming and being outdoors. And I'm happy to have him as a member of my team. He's been with us for about 18 years now. And so I'd like to congratulate Mr. Dennis Short.
Dennis, I'd like to present this to you on behalf of the board. I think this is the second time I've gotten to present you an award. I know you have been with us a long time, and we thank you for all that you do to keep our buses safe and in turn keep our children safe. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Again, congratulations to Mr. York and Ms. Sigmund. At this point, we're moving on to in our recognitions to the United Way campaign, and I will call on Stephanie Kofod.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Hartness. It's my honor and privilege at this time to introduce Melinda Beecham. She is the Chief Professional Officer of the United Way of Davie County, and she's going to share with us our campaign results and announce some exciting news for us.
Thank you, Stephanie, and Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, and Dr. Hartness. It's always a pleasure to be here. I get to be here at this time of the year and a couple of other times, and as I have said many times, just to be in the presence of educators is always such an honor for me, and especially the educators in this particular school system, which we already know is just absolutely fantastic. And I have to say again, as I have said before, you helped me raise my 3 children, and they didn't turn out half bad. Very pleased with my daughter Amanda, who has a PhD in molecular medicine and translational science. Don't ask me what that is. I went to the whole presentation when she did her dissertation. I didn't understand a word she said, but oh gosh, I was so impressed. It was a different language. And my twin boys that a lot of you had, Barbara Owens knows these children, are 25 years old, and one is working in nanotechnologies and one is in loss prevention. So I thank you again, probably for the 25th time, for what you did to help me raise those wonderful and productive citizens. And I'm here tonight to also thank you for your participation in our United Way campaign. I do have to mention that you guys go the extra mile. We have Wendy, our own Wendy Horn on your board, is the chairman of our campaign this year. Couldn't be happier about that. We appreciate her so very much for her active participation in so many areas of this community. Mr. Jeff Wallace is on our campaign cabinet and was very active in your own campaign. So we're very pleased with that situation. Our board of, director of our board president, is also a staff person in your schools, Mr. Joseph Gary. So we're very, very attached to the education system. So thank you for that. This year, I want to congratulate our school system for coming in at almost a $3,000 increase over last year. So that deserves an applause, I think. Took a lot. It was a lot of hard work. I want to thank every principal who got extra involved this year and came to a meeting and took some extra ownership of the campaign. So that was terrific. And we're very pleased with those results. And what we decided to do is have a drawing this year for everyone who gave at least a building block gift. And our building block gift is $1 a week, or $52 a year is a building block gift. These gifts are might be small in what you think of the amount, but they are mighty in what they can do for this community, especially as a collective. You know, it's very cool what happens when you get people together who want to, who decide they want to help, and what you can do with that kind of energy. And that's what we had. We had folks who, of course, gave more than the building block gift, so they got an extra ticket in the drawing. And we're giving away an iPad mini. So I think it's just cute as a button. And I'd love to keep it, but I'm not, because this is going to go to Lynn Cook at South Davie Middle School. Is there anybody here from South Davie? Hey, wonderful. So, this is great. Thank you. You are Mr. Cook? Wonderful. I'm so glad you were here. That's great. Look at what you did. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so that was exciting. And then once again, which has happened for a few years, the department within the school system to receive our certificate this year for the greatest increase is the transportation department. So come on back up here with a 56. A 56% increase over last year. You guys just don't stop.
Yeah, we don't.
I think it's great.
Right on
Thank you
time.
so much. Thank you so much. And thank you again for everything that you guys do for our community and for your support of the United Way.
Okay, and we have one more winner to announce. For the last several years, the Pierce Group Benefits has provided club seat tickets to the Carolina Panthers game, and we have 2 tickets to give away for the Sunday, December 14th, Carolina Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. And I'm a little sad to say it was not me, but Jennifer McPherson from North Davie won. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Beecham, for all the hard work and all the good that United Way does in Davie County. We appreciate that. At this time, we're moving on to the consent agenda, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I have a motion by Ms. Horn. Do I have a second? I have a second. I want to make sure we had an amended. Yeah, we're voting on the amended personnel report. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to business items. And the first business item is the RFQs for our geotechnical and special services for the high school project. Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board of Education, you have been provided copies of the 5 responses to the request for qualifications for geotechnical and construction materials testing and special inspection services. What we ask you to do tonight is to consider these firms based upon their qualifications. And I hope you've had an opportunity to review these qualification packets. And the staff requests that the Board of Education, once you select a firm, that you would authorize the superintendent to negotiate a contract with that firm and bring that contract to you back in November. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, it will be appropriate for the board to discuss the qualifications and select a firm.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hartness. Okay, do we have any discussion about that before I ask for any motions? Have any questions or anything we need to talk about? Okay, everybody's had the opportunity to review everything. All right. I guess at this time, I'll ask for a motion for a prospective testing firm, I guess is the way we need to do that. Is that how we need to do that?
Yeah, well, what you're doing is you're looking for the best qualified firm based on demonstrated competence and qualification of the geotechnical engineering services that you've requested in your RFQ.
Okay.
So you would ask someone to make a motion to award or to authorize the staff to negotiate a contract with the best qualified firm,
Okay.
X, that they deem to be X, and then you can have discussion and then vote on that motion.
Okay, all right. Do we have any recommendations or do we have any other questions for this geotechnical and construction materials testing?
I'll just make a comment. I mean, it is, I'll admit, it is tough. And I have about that much background in that, which is very, very little, but it's tough to read through this and try to understand. All of them up front seem qualified. They're obviously in the business to do that, but I just want to make that comment. You know, it's not easy to sort through that and make a recommendation. You're not going off a dollar amount. You're not going off of, you're really going off of just which one is qualified. Obviously, we've got qualifications that they've got to adhere to, but then just, you know, who do you feel good about? Who do you know, maybe a relationship that we might have. But.
Do we have any of these firms that's got any background with the school system and work for Davie County?
Yes, Mr. Ridenhour. SNME has worked on projects in Davie County before. SKA did some structural steel testing, I believe, with Ellis Middle School. Clark has left, but I believe I read that in their proposal. So we have some experience. SNME, I know, has been, I have several reports from them in the past where they've done surveys and testing on the property of the school site in 2009, 2010.
Are they the group that's helping with the rough grading?
They are. SNME is working with Gray Engineering on the rough grading. So this is geotechnical services for the bulk of the project, as well as testing concrete, structural steel, all the other testing that has to take place during the construction process.
And I would also say, it looks like, to me, based on all the qualifications that were presented, it looks like that S&ME and SKA maybe kind of team up, and S&ME handle the geotechnical services and some of the construction materials testing, and SKA they handle some at Sutton Kennerly. They handle some of the steel, some of the more structural elements of the testing. So I know that we've had, I mean, based on the experience of S&ME, that we've had, they're very experienced working with Davie County. We've had, I think Davie County's had a good relationship with them. That would be my comments.
I hate to ask you to say that again. Exactly, you said one of them had experience with steel, more experience with steel. That's SKA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think S&ME's they're more of a geotechnical testing firm, but I think they kind of team with Sutton Kennerly, or this SKA, which is Sutton Kennerly, to work out some of the more structural elements of the building and that kind of thing.
Yes, having said that, I'd make a motion that we approve this SKA, to move forward with them. I mean, I don't know, I'm like Clint, I got less experience than you got with it, but, I mean, we gotta have somebody.
And Artie, the clarification there is you don't have to select one firm. You could select a firm or firms for this project, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
You can select more than one. You can have one for geotechnical and one for construction materials testing. Those are two separate disciplines, and the RFQ made clear that we can award to more than one firm.
Based on my understanding too, SME has been on site on 2009 and 2010, so they have a great background for the site. They've already done some testing. So as far as the primary, as you were talking, Artie, to me, they are the more experienced with the qualifications than the others. Of course, they'll partner, but still, I'm trying to prioritize first and second.
That was my question, Chad. When you said that they would partner, will they partner without a vote for voting for two, or do we need to vote for both of, or?
Well, I guess what I'm looking at, I was looking at the qualifications packets. And if you look at that, they have some of the same principles would work with this company as would work with this company. So what that tells me is they're working together. Maybe, but we could, I guess we ask for, in whole, we ask for geotechnical, construction materials, and special testing services. What we could do is, to the point, we could pull out and we could say, okay, we're looking at one company for geotechnical and special inspections, and we could look at one company for construction materials testing. We could do a scenario like that.
Would you say there's a benefit to that, or would you say there's a disadvantage to that? You're kind of
Well,
familiar
I'll
with
be
this
honest
business.
with you, it would be, I mean, I guess we could pull it apart, and I don't think there'd be any issue, but there would be two companies that we would be communicating with if we did that versus just having one.
Well, I'll tell you what, since we never did get a second on my motion, but I guess I can withdraw that motion, and, and maybe I was a little premature, and we can figure out if we need to do something different.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So Steve's withdrawing his motion.
And Mr. Chairman, the only question I had, just to be clear, S&ME and SKA have not presented a joint proposal to us. These are two separate proposals.
They are two separate proposals. That's right. That's right. That's right.
I was just going to say, I mean, so if we were to choose both, which I think really complicates things, I think whichever one we choose, these companies work together to fill in each other's gaps.
I think
So they sort of partner up to whichever, so they're going to do the part that makes the most sense for them. Just
Right.
perception, I don't know that for the fact.
Well,
but-
yeah, I don't want us to make any assumptions. and-
that's right.
and read too much into the proposals. If they've said that in the proposal that they intend to do that, that's one thing, but
Right.
you just need to,
Well,
if they
whenever you-
don't say that, you need to make a determination. If you intend to award to one, you need to make a determination which one of these companies is the best qualified for this project. Again, you can break it up and have construction materials testing and geotechnical services awarded under two separate contracts, if you so choose. But if you want to award to one, you need to award to the best qualified.
Well, I guess one of the oldest, one of the oldest sitting members of the board, and having worked and know the quality of SME, I would like to see them, if you all agree, awarding that contract to them, just based on their experience, based on their qualifications, and their knowledge base.
Okay, so do we have a motion for contracting with S&ME? Okay.
I would second that, knowing that I truly believe either one would do a great job. So it's not a reflection on any of those, but I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0.
So, Mr. Chairman, we will communicate with S&ME and we'll negotiate a contract agreement with them and bring that to you for your consideration at the November board meeting.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, if staff is unsuccessful in negotiating a contract, then you move on to the next best qualified firm. And so you could either make that determination now, or you could wait until November to make that determination.
Okay.
You could give staff some guidance, I mean, if you wanted to.
Okay.
So if for some reason we're unsuccessful with S&ME, not that I want to forecast any difficulties,
No,
but
no,
it
no,
does
no.
happen.
Okay, so is consensus okay to do that, or could we?
I think that's fine, as long as you give staff some direction
Okay,
about which
okay, all
way to
right.
move, and then they could come back to you and you could
We could
formally determine.
make a motion. So would we have consensus to, if we couldn't successfully negotiate a contract with S&ME, we would circle back with SKA? Okay. All right, thank you for that. At this time, we're moving on to a budget amendment for Ellis Middle School ball field restrooms. Ms. Smink.
Thank you, Chairman Fuller, members of the board, Dr. Hartness. You have before you this evening a budget amendment for the Ellis Middle School ball field restroom project. This project was approved last year with the use of lottery funds of $53,000. To date, we've expended $8,247 in architect fees for that project, and that leaves a balance of lottery funds of $44,752. The restrooms will be constructed by our maintenance staff, our Davie County High School carpentry class, and our Davie County High School masonry class. And this is the same manner that was used to construct the restrooms at the North Davie Middle School and at South Davie Middle School. The project requires an additional $60,247.23 in funding to be completed. And it's the recommendation of staff that we use the $27,500 that's remaining from the cancellation of the HVAC project that was at Pine Brook. You may recall we had that project, we canceled that project so we could do two other projects at North Davie and South Davie. So there is a balance remaining on what had been initially budgeted for that HVAC project, and that balance is $27,500. So it's our recommendation that you, in order to come up with this $60,000, that you use the $27,500 from that project and that $32,474.23 of capital outlay fund balance be used to complete this, the funding that's needed for this project. And that's the recommendation of staff.
Thank you, Ms. Meek. So we have a recommendation to approve a budget amendment to provide some more funds for this restroom project. And I will just, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I know that I think what we're looking at is something similar in structure to what North Davie and South Davie has. And is that right? Thank you. And, but I think one of the extra expenses there is that the sewer is going to have to be pumped site to the sewer that is there on the site. So that's part of our extra expense there. So that's just a background. Is there any other questions or anything related to that? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion. We have a motion by Ms. Horn. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Livingood. We have a second and a motion and a second. At this time, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to the budget resolution for fiscal year 2014-2015. Ms. Meek.
Mr. Chairman, I would just preface this agenda item. As you recall, back in September, on September the 10th, we had a budget work session, and the board was provided a summary of the budget and the changes that were necessary due to the state budget decisions. And you all voted unanimously to utilize fund balance to balance the budget at this point in time and to begin discussions with the county commissioners, the new Board of Commissioners after they're seated in December, to discuss appropriate levels of funding for the Davie County schools in the future. This resolution that you have attached addresses that directive from the board and reflects those changes.
Thank you, Dr. Hartness. Do you have any comments, Ms. Meek?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just that it's a recommendation that you approve the budget.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have a recommendation on the floor to approve this budget resolution. Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion by Mr. Junker? Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Owens. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to the public address to the board, and I will ask Mr. Bolick if he will talk to us there.
We had no one sign up for public comment.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to committee and staff reports, and first up is Dr. Hartness with board policy updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, you have been presented with several items in this board policy update agenda item. The first attachment is a draft to policy 9155 called pre-qualification of bidders for construction projects. This policy was developed by the North Carolina School Boards Association and distributed by them. It's been reviewed and edited by our attorney, Artie Bolick, and it was developed based on a law that was amended this past year in the General Assembly that allows school districts to pre-qualify bidders for construction projects. So what I would ask you to do is to review that draft policy. We're not asking you to take action on any of these items tonight, but we would ask you to consider approving that policy in November. If you have any questions about that, please give me a call and we can discuss. Essentially, and Artie, you can add to this at any point in time, but this would allow us to review qualifications of contractors and folks who would potentially bid on the high school project and pre-qualify some of those contractors based on their qualifications and experience. So if the board approves this policy, we'll have to develop a rubric that looks at the qualifications we would look for in a contractor or a bidder. And this is new for North Carolina. So Artie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, it's new in a sense. You previously had been given authority to pre-qualify bidders, but there was no direction on how you were to do that. This summer, the General Assembly crafted this statute, which now says you have to have an objective set of criteria to pre-qualify. It can't be just anything you want. You've got to come up with an objective set of criteria to measure the capabilities of the prospective bidders. The goal is still the same. You want to make sure that the persons who are submitting bids are capable, qualified firms that will be able to construct your project. But a lot of the subjectivity that surrounded pre-qualification in the past is now prohibited by this statute. And so what we will work, if you pass this policy, we will then work on coming up with a project-specific rubric to measure pre-qualification for each particular project. That's the other part about the statute. It says you can't have a general form that you use for every project. You have to look at each project, come up with objective criteria that are tailored to that project, and then pre-qualify on that basis. One other thing I would add, just because a firm is pre-qualified doesn't necessarily mean that if they are the low bidder, that you have to accept that bid. If you later determine that they are not a responsible bidder, despite the fact that they were pre-qualified, you would still have the option to make that determination as well. But pre-qualification will help you streamline and define the group of folks who will be bidding on your project to the best qualified.
Thank you. And you would hope that, and I guess that was the intent, that should help protect the school system from any arbitrary and capricious pre-qualification requirements. I mean, I would think it would from a legal perspective.
Well, yeah, and that was part of the goal, was to make sure that if a firm was being told they cannot bid on a project, it was for an objective reason as opposed to a subjective reason that you just didn't like their logo. And so these are going to be objective criteria, years of experience in the industry, number of similar projects built within the last 5 years, and we're going to have to come up with a scoring system to and a minimum score that we want to see all of our bidders achieve based on those scores for each project.
So any other questions about that proposed policy? That'll be a new policy for us, and again, we will be taking that up in November. The second recommendation from staff relates to policy 6322, student assignment to school buses. This is a recommendation that came from our transportation department that we provide some clarification in this policy. So if you'll take a look at that, it's just clarifying students who are transfer students are required to provide their own transportation. And that's just clarifying the practice that's been in place for quite some time. So we'd ask the board to consider that policy change next month. Also last is the policy 6127. It deals with the EpiPens in schools. This was a change in the legislature enacted in law this past year. We're already in compliance, but it is a clarification for our policy manual. So board, I'd ask you to consider those three things at our November meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Hartness. At this time, I will call on Aaron Foyle to come up and speak to us about student accountability.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, Dr. Hartness, members of our staff and community. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the accountability results from the 13-14 school year and to discuss the membership of our district as reported in the first month Principals Monthly Report. First, let's look at the accountability report for the 13-14 school year. All right. This is the second year of implementation of the READY accountability model, but there have been some changes already. In March of 2014, the North Carolina State Board of Education adopted a new 5 achievement level scale that replaced the old 4-level scale. Under this new range of achievement levels, the achievement level 3 identifies students who have sufficient command of grade level knowledge and skills in the test content areas to move on to the next grade, but who may need more academic support in order to become college and career ready in future years. To help us understand this shift of the academic levels, if you'll look at this graph with me here. Along the left-hand side, you'll see scale scores. That's the score that the student makes on the test, and across the bottom, you'll see the achievement levels. Every level has a cut score. That's the scale score that indicates a new level. These are represented by the blue lines. In any standardized test that is given, there's always a standard error of measurement that we put around any given score. Simply put, if we tested the same group of students on a different day, the scores might be slightly different given the normal variation of performance of any person on any given day. So the standard error of measurement, it shows if we tested those students on a different day, there's good evidence that it would actually be between the upper limit and the lower limit. The North Carolina Department of Instruction took one standard error of measure below the level 3 cut score, and they made a new level 3. Then the level 4s became, the old level 3s became a level 4, and the old level 4s became a level 5. And so we have our new 5-level system. This gives us two types of proficiency. The first type of proficiency is the college and career ready. That is our current level 4s and level 5s, which would be our old level 3s and level 4s. And then we have grade level proficient, which are the levels 3, 4s, and 5s. The grade level proficiency is used in all of our state reporting, but the college and career ready proficiencies will be used in our annual measurable objective reporting and also to compare to previous years since it's equivalent. So be aware, you'll see these two terms quite a bit. If you look at the things that we've posted in board docs, all of the documentation either has the fact that it's a grade level proficiency or it's a college and career ready proficiency. Be careful because only the CCR numbers can be compared to previous years, and our grade level proficiency will be just reported out for this year, and in future years we'll be able to compare among years. The Ready Accountability Model measures in 3 different ways. First, it measures performance. It looks at those students that achieve proficiency. Second, it looks at growth by using statistical data from the test in a program called EVOS that's by SAS, and our annual measurable objectives, or AMOs. To calculate those AMOs, schools across the state are divided into subgroups, and those subgroups are measured by their proficiency on state assessments. AMOs are a series of proficiency and participation targets that increase every year in an effort to ensure that all subgroups are improving and to decrease any proficiency gaps that might exist between them. Those 3 measures are looked at for all components of the model. The components include the end of course or end of grade test, the ACT, graduation rates for that year's graduating class, math course rigor, which is all high school students that completed Math 3, and the ACT work keys, which is a test that's given to students that are concentrators in career and technical education. One of the components of our logo, you see our logo and you see it on the TV screens on either side, but one of the components is Achieve. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what our schools achieved this past year. I'm not going to go through every proficiency percentage or growth measure that are included in the reports that you have. You can look at those. Instead, I'd like to show you some of the highlights of what our students achieved this past year. In the performance category, a performance composite is a combination of all the proficiencies given for all tests and all grades at the whole school. 10 out of 12 of our schools increased or maintained their performance composite. Last year, we gave 17 different end of grade and end of course tests. Out of those 17, 11 of them, we maintained or increased our proficiency for that test across the district. This composite score allows us to look at other LEAs and compare ourselves to them. Our composite score ranked us at 11th out of 115 LEAs in the state. And again, just at the bottom there, there's a reminder that you only compare the college and career-ready proficiencies to the 12-13 school year. In growth, 9 out of our 11 eligible schools met or exceeded growth expectations compared to 8 out of 11 last year. We had 4 schools growth. This means that their students learned significantly more than the average student in the state last year. These 4 schools were Canancer Elementary School, North Davie Middle School, South Davie Middle School, and William Ellis Middle School. In looking at our annual measurable objectives, we find that as an LEA, we had 129 participation and proficiency targets for our subgroups. Subgroups include all racial groups, male and female, economically disadvantaged students, limited English proficient students, students with disabilities, and our academically and intellectually gifted students. Our LEA met 89.1 of those participation and proficiency targets. It's down slightly from 93.2% last year that we met. We did have 4 schools this year that met 100% of their AMO targets, and that's up from 3 that met it last year. The targets were higher this year and will continue to increase every year as they try to decrease the proficiency gaps that may exist between subgroups. Another part of our logo is Excel. And one of our most exciting accomplishments this past year was our cohort graduation rate. Here you see a graph for our past 8 years. You see our cohort graduation rate. This is the 4-year. And you see that over the past years, we've gone up and down and then have kind of steadily increased up until this year. And we gained 4.4 percentage points to get to 87.6%. And that is an amazing accomplishment. And I'd like to give everybody in this room a round of applause for that. We look forward to continuing to focus on this number to increase that in future graduating classes. That's the READY accountability model, and this part is not part of the READY accountability model, but I did want to talk about it for a minute. For the first time this year, school performance grades will be assigned to each school in North Carolina. This first year will be based on data that was accomplished in the 13-14 school year. The grades will be based on a school's achievement score and the student's academic growth inside of that school. The final grade will be based on a 15-point scale and will be included in the school report card that's released on February 5th, 2015. I would like to, however, bring to you tonight an estimation of what we think that our grades will look like. The current law sets the formula for school performance grades. For achievement or proficiency to count 80% of that final grade, and for growth to count 20% of that final grade. This was the formula included in the original Senate version of the budget bill that outlines the implementation of the school performance grades. As you can see, underneath this formula, we will have 1 school that is an A, 5 schools that receive a B, 4 schools that receive a C, and 1 school that receives a D. However, during this past summer, the House also put forward a version of the budget bill. In that bill, they proposed a formula that included achievement at 20% and growth at 80%, flipping the percentage of the components. Even though that version didn't make it into the law, I think it's worth examining the results if that law had been passed. Here are the results of the flipped version of that formula. You would see we would have 4 A's, 5 B's, 2 C's, and no D's. This here is the comparison between the 2 versions. Clearly, the component that's emphasized in the formula dictates the results, because you can see the difference between if you count more growth or if you count more achievement. Again, the first set of numbers, the blue numbers there, are what is currently in the law, and what should be released in February. These are estimations. We have not been given the exact formula, but we've gone through and looked at the numbers, and this is what we believe that they will be. Are there any questions about that?
Aaron, I have a couple comments about that.
Okay.
So what you just saw is our estimation of